And why don't you roll it?
This meeting is being recorded.
All right, I'd like to introduce Meghan Rosen. Kirk, have you muted Ken, have you?
Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you. So I wanted to introduce Meghan Rosen, who I met about 5 years ago. We were working together on a video documenting the work of the Friendship Donation Network. And Meghan is the coordinator for that organization. And I learned a lot about how food was being distributed to the needy within Tompkins County in the act of putting together this documentary piece. It was a great collaboration with Meghan, and I'll never forget having worked with her and her organization and how much she was tapped into the network of people helping people within Ithaca. So with no further ado, I introduce Meghan Rosen. It's all yours.
Thank you, Mark. And see if I can share my screen here. Does that show up for you guys? Can you see that?
Yes, just go ahead and kick it into, if you can, full screen.
Yep.
There we go. Great, you got it.
Okay, good. Great. Well, thank you. Nice to join you all on this cold Tuesday. My name is Meghan Sheehan Rosen, and I'm the coordinator with Friendship Donations Network. I've served in that role for just over 10 years. And Friendship Donations Network is our local food rescue organization. So we have a twofold mission: to rescue fresh, nutritious food that would otherwise go to waste, and then redistribute that food to people throughout the community who will enjoy it and benefit from it. And we aim to do that as simply as we can, as efficiently as we can. We try to avoid bureaucracy as much as we can. And as Mark referenced, really everything we do and the core of the work that we do is really rooted in relationships. And I think that FDN and the network that exists throughout our community really exemplifies the power of people and what the great impact people can have by working together. So this, some of you may know, we're a small town here. Some of you may know Sarah Pines. She's the woman who founded FDN back in 1988. So we're in our 34th year of operating. Sarah really is responsible for the food rescue operation that we have going on here. She ran FDN pretty much single-handedly, of course, with plenty of help from community volunteers. But for the first 22 years, she's responsible for establishing the partnerships that we have with most of the local food businesses that donate, and a lot of the hunger relief programs that came into existence to distribute some of the fresh food that was now available. What's significant about this is that maybe some of you are familiar with the concept of food rescue. Certainly over the last few years, it's become much more on the radar, a lot more focus and attention and resources around reducing food waste and rescuing and redistributing food. But 30 years ago, that was very much not the case. So we're really very much ahead of the curve here locally to have such a long-standing established food rescue organization. From the start, Sarah's vision, and still to this day, was focused on fresh, nutritious, fresh, perishable food, which back then, years ago, food banks and food pantries really primarily offered shelf-stable food items, non-perishable food items. So FDN, when FDN came on the scene, we were really the source of the fresh fruits and vegetables to give access to those foods to people who may have had trouble accessing them otherwise. Fortunately, things have changed very much for the better. And now there's an abundance of fresh food available from most hunger relief programs. This slide I'm sharing with you to provide the bigger context, the more macro level of why we do what we do and why it matters. So if food waste were its own country, it would be the third largest contributor to greenhouse gases. So climate change is very much connected to the work that we're doing and trying to prevent food from ending up in the landfill. It's kind of astounding. And this I share with you just to bring it more down to the personal level, the more personal impact of that food waste has on each of us individually and in our households. Just the amount of food, the amount of money, as well as other resources that are wasted when perfectly good food is wasted. And the image of the egg there, I like because it references, it's not just food as a standalone when food goes to waste, it's all of the other time, labor, fuel for transportation, lots and lots of water, electricity, so many other resources that are also wasted when food goes to waste. So Mark, do you recognize this slide? This was in the documentary that we worked together on. So this I share with you to give you a little bit of a view of how FDN works on a daily basis, sort of the flow of the food, where the food comes from and where it goes. And FDN is at the center of that, serving as the connector. So we coordinate with the food donor businesses. The benefit of one of the roles that FDN plays in service to the community is being a single, reliable, consistent point of contact, so that if a business has food to donate, they can just contact FDN 7 days a week. Somebody will be available to answer the phone, and then we can coordinate figuring out who's able to use whatever donation is available. The nice thing about that is that, say, Wegmans or Green Star, a farmer doesn't have to think about what day of the week it is and what schedule a pantry is open, or what the capacity is of any particular program and what they'll be able to use or not use. And so FDN can serve as that connection, that midpoint of contact. And then that allows us pretty much, I've never really had to turn away a donation. We kind of have an open arms approach, and we can pretty much accept whatever food is available and figure out, because of the strength of this network, figure out where it can be used. And this happens really efficiently. So we're operating 7 days a week, every day of the year. Christmas Day is the only day that the businesses are closed. And so that's the only day that we're not actively doing pickups. And we operate with what's called like just-in-time food rescue. So we're really quick turnover. So we are collecting food every morning, and within a matter of hours, that food is going home with people, sort of the end recipients. So it's very efficient, very quick turnaround time, and that allows us to accept donations of perishable food that may not have a whole lot of time left before they need to be enjoyed. So whenever possible, we have the food go directly from the donor site to the distribution site. However, we do have a small storage facility located in the Just Because Center at the west end of Ithaca. So we have a walk-in cooler there, a CoolBot, which is an energy efficient alternative to a commercial walk-in cooler, and some freezer space and space to store things that don't need to be refrigerated as well. The nice thing about the Just Because Center, as part of this with the FDN storage facility down there, is it allows allowed us to expand our outreach to many more different food distribution partners who may not necessarily need or be able to use 1,000 pounds of food that Wegmans is going to put out for us, but may be able to come and pack up a box or a couple boxes of food if it's somebody who's going to make a home visit or just has a smaller distribution program. So that there's a link there. So if anyone is interested in looking at the specific partners that we work with to distribute food, that link at the bottom will show you the listing, the 7 days a week where all of the food is available, and all of the various community partners that we work with to be able to do what we do. I just want to share a little bit more about the partners that we work with to do this distribution, because they are so essential to the work that we do. And so I kind of think of this as like a tiered, so that on the top tier, you think of like Loaves and Fishes. Most people are familiar with Loaves and Fishes, or the network of food pantries that exists throughout the county. And then we have community organizations that we partner with. So these organizations that may not necessarily be hosting an open to the public food pantry, but they make food available to clients that they're working with. So like OAR is an organization that works with people who are formerly incarcerated and are coming back to the community, and so providing supports and resources. Tompkins County Mental Health Pros program has community meals as an important part of their programming, the work that they do. So they've received food from FDN as well, a number of others. And then going back to that tier, kind of the distribution partners, one more level down, I call this like our relationship-based people sharing food with people. And this is one of the things that I think is really special about FDN. And I think so many people appreciate sort of the simplicity of somebody knows somebody that happens to be having a hard time. They can make a home delivery and bring food to them. Some of our volunteers and partners do pop-up food distributions at lower income housing communities. Some of the mobile home parks in the rural communities. We have some volunteers who are able to help get food connected with folks who are undocumented. So people who don't feel safe accessing some of the other free food resources that are available. So much of this happens really just, as I said, rooted in relationships, operating based on trust and the honor system, really not getting stuck with the questioning who's eligible or, where's food going, but really just staying more focused on capturing the food while it's still good and fresh and edible, and as quickly and efficiently as possible, getting it to people who need it most. And so there's a really incredible network that makes this happen. And then of course, over the last couple of years, the mutual aid projects have become more active around the area. And so we've been working together with the various mutual aid groups to be able to share food with people that way as well. So really, what I would just underline here is the role that I see FDN playing is just trying to support the efforts that people in our community are able to make to connect food with people. And we just try to get out of the way, and let that happen. And it's just beautiful to see what comes from that. So I think that's good for that there. So this is, if you're like me and you like to visualize things like a map, this on the left has some of the pinpoints of both where the food is donated from as well as where it's distributed. So we really don't have any restrictions or limitations in terms of our distribution. We are distributing food throughout Tompkins County, and then in many of the communities outside of Tompkins County as well, Cortland and Tioga, Seneca, and beyond. So, and then some of the food donors here are featured, and then our website has a full list. So some of the food donor businesses will have us on a 7 days a week schedule. They know somebody from FDN is going to show up and take whatever they have. And then others will just call us when they have something available. So just to share a little bit about the numbers, we rescue over 1,500, it's probably closer to 2,000, over 1,500 pounds of fresh food every day. And with those 50 plus food distribution partners, we're reaching at least 2,000 people every week. And so, so my role as coordinator of FDN is the only paid staff position, and everybody else involved with our organization are all volunteers. And here's a couple of our volunteers picking up from the farmers market, which we do pick up at the end of the market every day throughout the season. And maybe some of you have seen the neighborhood food hub signs around the county. We started this project coming up on 10 years ago. And the whole idea here was just to make it easy for people who grow their own food in their own gardens, or who have a CSA and may end up with extra fruits or vegetables, to make it easy to share that food with people. So this has been a cool community project. Some people will host a cooler on their porch, like here, or community centers and libraries have also hosted neighborhood food hubs as a way to make it easy for people to share some of that fresh local bounty. So here we have the food recovery hierarchy on the right, and that's something that the EPA put together. We follow this model. So we kind of fit in that second level down. What I would say here is that I think there needs to be a lot more emphasis on the top of force reduction. So there's not a problem with the shortage of food. There is way more food than we need, and it's just a matter of we're trying to reduce that surplus at the source. But at least if there is surplus, then that's where food rescue organizations come into play, and down from there. And then kind of this is an interesting time. Again, as I said, with more just over even the last few years, a lot more attention on food waste and food rescue. So this year, in January, just a month ago in January, the New York State food donation and food scrap recycling law came into effect. So what that means is that businesses who are generating a certain amount of food waste, 2 tons per week on average, are now required to donate whatever is edible and to compost whatever is not edible. So because we've already been operating here and have excellent partnerships with most of the food businesses here locally, we're not going to see a groundbreaking effect from this new law. But what is really, I think, important about this is that it changes the conversation a little bit. It changes the dynamic between, so if FDN approaches a business to talk about donating food, it's no longer this local nonprofit organization trying to make the case of why this is something they should do. It's now, as it becomes policy, it affects that, and that's happening. Several other states, similar laws that have gone into effect. And my understanding is that it'll get phased in. So we started with the largest food waste generators, and then as over the coming years, it'll start to bring in affect more and more businesses. And then there's a few other here. If anyone here is particularly interested in some of the policy and legislation, I highly recommend the Harvard Food Law and Policy Clinic as an excellent resource for more information on this. There is, so back in 1996, there's a federal law. There's a federal law called the Good Samaritan Food Donations Act, and that passed back in the 90s, protects any donors from liability. So food donor businesses, organizations like FDN who are distributing food, cannot be held liable as long as food is donated in good faith. But one of the challenges with this is that, so that's great. So, right, like there's no good reason for food to be going to waste. There's a law that protects, but there is still some resistance, some businesses that are still concerned about liability. So there's a new legislation in Congress right now, the Food Donation Improvement Act, which is intended to give that that law a little bit more teeth, to hopefully be a little bit more convincing for some businesses to be willing to come on. And then one thing that I think relevant here too is the Food Date Labeling Act, which is so much perfectly good food goes to waste just because of the date labels on it. I'm sure everybody here has had had our own experience with that. Is this yogurt still good to eat? You know, so that's encouraging to see just some policy to try to continue moving us in the right direction. Be stuck here. Let's see if I can fix this.
Some problem that the people have. They're trying to get things from their computer. Zoom.
Apologies for a little technical challenge here. Okay. Does it show up for you here now, the food rescue resources? Okay.
No.
What do you see?
Two screens side by side with
Slide
current.
10, slide 11, and your lineup along the left.
Oh, okay.
Like you're in presenter.
How about now? Food rescue resources?
Same thing here.
Same thing.
All right.
We're back
Well-
to. Okay, you must have stopped sharing the screen. There you go.
Trying to see if I resources
This meeting is being recorded.
related to food rescue. So savethefood.com is an excellent one. If you go down to our own website, friendshipdonations.org, you'll see a number of videos, including the one that we're speaking about that Mark worked with us on a few years back. And then there's a few more mainstream things that are great, good, entertaining, and get the message across, and good starters for conversations. And then I wanted to just make sure everybody here was also aware of what's going on locally, not just specific to food waste and food rescue, but also the food system in general. So tompkinsfoodfuture.org is the website. And right now, there's a food system plan being created, a really community-driven process to create talk about what a food system is, why it matters, and food waste is one part of that. So that's a great initiative that's going on right now with lots of opportunity for people to contribute in various ways there. And here, oh, this is just a resource about the food and date labels. Again, so much perfectly good food goes to waste unnecessarily because of a confusion or a misunderstanding around what dates mean. And so that's an easy place to start. Start with being able to understand those better. And here's my contact information. Happy to talk more. But this point, I'd love to know if you all have any questions, want me to speak more specifically about anything.
Your organization also handles furniture and household goods. What's the channels for those?
So we're actually just focused on food at this point. You may be referring to Sarah Pines, who is still involved with helping to collect and redistribute furniture and household goods. So
Yeah.
that's really her own own
Okay.
independent project. But right now we're primarily working on food.
I noticed that FoodNet wasn't listed as one of the organizations that you're passing food on to. Is there a particular reason for that?
Yeah, we have worked with FoodNet over the years and certainly reached out to them, especially when we've had surplus food. At time, they have very specific dietary requirements and restrictions on what they're able to use. So there had been times over the years where we would get like tremendous amounts of loaves of sliced breads, which was one of the things that they could use. But it hasn't, the nature of food rescue is very unpredictable. So we really never know on any given day exactly what's going to be available until we show up and see it. And as you can imagine, with the, robust program that they have, they need a little bit more consistency and time to know what's going to be available so they can make that into their meals. So it hasn't worked out necessarily for the food from FDN to go into their main meals, but we have spoken about being able to combine efforts so that if there are, say, like members of the household that are receiving deliveries from FoodNet, or if there are other, food insecure concerns with some of their clients, that would be an opportunity for us to be able to share some of the food. So we do have a good working relationship, just hasn't completely lined up to be able to have the regular food distribution that way.
So Megan, I wanted to ask you, what is your relationship with the food bank of the Southern Tier?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we operate as independent organizations, but we're closely connected, communicating all the time. A number of the food distribution partners that FDN works with are also member agencies of the Food Bank of the Southern Tier, or depending on where they're located geographically, with one of the other regional food banks. So the benefit of, so back in the earlier days, the food bank was supplying the shelf stable items, FDN was supplying the fresh food items. Now the food banks have really done a great job at sourcing fresh food from farmers and from other sources. So for the organizations like Loaves and Fishes or the larger food pantries that are serving high numbers of people, it makes a lot of sense to partner with a food bank because they can order exactly what they want. It'll show up at a scheduled time, very predictable. And there's a little bit more involved in terms of, reporting and paperwork and eligibility stuff. But anyway, it works out typically really well to have the kind of that complementary relationship with getting some stuff from the food bank and then some fresh stuff from FDN. And then there's a number of the smaller programs that we partner with may not may not have the capacity to be able to handle all that is required to be a member agency of a food bank. And so it's sometimes a little bit just simpler and easier to be able to get food from FDN, especially if it's just a smaller distribution, a smaller amount that's needed. But yeah, so we have a great working relationship. And one of the positive things that has come out of the last 2 years is this even closer collaboration and coordination with many of the food related programs. So for sure, the food bank and FDN, we created a Tompkins County Food Task Force at the very start of the pandemic. And that was a really important platform or, opportunity for all of us who were doing various things related to food to be able to be at least in communication, have a little bit better understanding of who's doing what, and then have an opportunity to be able to share needs and resources and communicate and coordinate that way. So I think that we're in a good position here locally in our community to have some really strong partners that are working well together.
Would you outline for us what we might do if some of us volunteered for your organization? And then also
Sure. Yeah. So we run on volunteers and many of the day-to-day activities involve doing a pickup or a delivery. Sometimes that might be just a one-time shift. Some other times that'll be a recurring shift that might be once a week at the same time or once a month, just depending on what the schedule is. And then we have other volunteer opportunities that some volunteers help to answer our phones and coordinate when I'm not around or on weekends or holidays. And then we have other volunteers who help us by doing writing or photography. Some folks come down to our facility in the Just Because Center to help us make sure that our food inventory is being tended to properly and keep us clean and tidy down there. And we have a all volunteer board of directors. And so, yeah, so those are just probably some of the highlights of what volunteers do. But if anyone is interested, definitely feel free to reach out. Be happy to speak more about that.
and what are where do monies go that get donated to you? What does your overhead look like, and what use do you put the money to?
Yeah, great. Well, we're a very frugal organization, so we aim to do what we do with using as few resources as possible. We have very low overhead. And so my position as coordinator is 25 hours a week. And we've talked over the years, revisited it, we've intentionally decided to stay small as an organization, to not grow and do, big and become fancy. It's kind of a little bit of a shift from sort of that default world we live in, and like bigger and better and always new projects and developments. We've kind of made the decision of, if we can do what we do and fulfill this mission of rescuing as much food as we can and getting it to people, if we can do that and stay small, if it works 34 years strong, we seem to be doing well. So we've decided to not change something that works. So yeah, so we do have, so very low overhead, but all of the financial donations that we receive, the majority of them come from individual donors in the community. So we're fortunate to not have to spend a lot of time fundraising and grant writing. We have received grants from local foundations over the years, but the bulk of our budget is met by individual donors from the community.
You must have some rent for the space that you need for those storages, and you must have some fuel and transportation expenses, things like that.
Yeah, modest rent, which is really one of the benefits of being having our home at the Just Because Center. And yeah, we do offer gas cards because volunteers are using their own personal vehicles to move food. So we do offer gas cards to people to help help cover their costs. And then, of course, you know, the basic things like the phone to be able to respond quickly that way. And yeah, but pretty modest in our expenses.
And many years ago, gotta get the video going. Many years ago, I was in a Cornell dining hall when they closed, and I was amazed at the amount of food that was left. And I said, well, don't you donate that? And they said, oh no, we're not allowed to. We have to send it to compost. Is that changed now with the new law? Do you get anything from the Cornell dining halls, or do they still compost it all?
Yeah, great question. Cornell is one of our partners that we receive food donations from. They are included in that new New York State law. So we have a bunch of different connections with Cornell. We receive, but specifically to the dining hall, there's an organization, a student-run organization on campus called the Cornell Food Recovery Network. And so they're a group of students that work with Cornell Dining to recover food from the dining halls that's never left the kitchen. It's never been put out for service. So throughout the semester, we usually receive, they usually do 3 or 4 recoveries a week from the dining halls. Starting this Friday, very exciting, we'll be resuming after a little bit of a break, getting donations from the campus cafes and eateries that close on Friday afternoon for the weekend. So all of that great, like easy grab and go, you know, like sandwiches and yogurts and salads and items like that have just been hopefully getting composted, but not getting donated. So starting this week, that'll be a new connection. But one thing I'd love to share with you is just a few weeks ago, as students were coming back to campus, of course they had their COVID, policies in place. So that Cornell Dining was preparing all of these meals in preparation to serve students who are going to have to be in isolation in case they tested positive. So gorgeous sandwiches and entrees, all packaged, just needed to be reheated. But the good thing was that there were fewer people who tested positive and needed to be in isolation. But the flip of that was that there were hundreds and probably thousands of all of these excess meals that they had prepared and didn't need. So they called FDN and we were able to, they delivered and we were able to redistribute incredible amount, like 2,000, I think, total meal entrees and sandwiches over a period of that week and a half that people were coming back to campus. And it was really lovely, good quality stuff, ideal for the distribution to reach people, especially who are living in vulnerable conditions. Some people might be housed at a motel and really not have access to a kitchen, or some of our volunteers will bring food to people who are living in some of the encampments where people are living outside. So that was one of the more recent highlights of the connection with Cornell. But yeah, so one of the things here is, for sure, lots of great food is getting captured. Definitely a lot is still just getting composted, and we're sort of engaged in conversation and trying to get as much, work together to rescue as much as we can.
Well, very good.
Wonderful.
Thank you for your presentation and all your good work. Greatly appreciated.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you. Wonderful.